Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'll be addressing some issues around vocabulary learning. I know this is a really common topic among language learners, and no matter how many videos I make on this, actually the problems aren't going to solve themselves unless you rewire something in your personal learning system. So I'm here to just give you some ideas, not to tell you everything you've been doing until this video was wrong, because only my methods can work and you should just change everything. I think essentially there's no right and wrong way of learning a language because your brain knows how to learn a language. It's something each one of us has done, undoubtedly. But the thing is, if you keep doing certain things, it might as well take you 13 years to learn a language. We are just trying to fix this process and make it as effective as possible. But still, there are things that would work for different people because everyone has a different cognitive learning system. So watch this video, try everything, and take what inspires you, what works for you. So at the end of the day, it's still your personal work, and I'm just here to inspire you to do something. I find that a central reason why many people perceive vocabulary learning as challenging is because in our brains, there is a secret connotation that vocabulary learning equals having good memory. So only people who can memorize random stuff, who have a good memory, who can recall things, can actually learn vocabulary. But I think vocabulary learning has only partially to do with our capacity of memorizing things. I think a lot of misconceptions about vocabulary learning just derive from our early encounters with languages. Because to me, when I was around the age of 8, I was learning English for the first time at school, and we had this weekly homework where we had to write a word in English 10 times, and then we would write a Turkish translation 10 times. And the thing is, if you try to learn 20 clothing items, at the end, you will probably have learned at least like 5 or 6 clothing items. And with some practice, you can also learn 20 of them. But this won't guarantee that you can describe their color, their material, their qualities, or describing what you're wearing. Because you only committed to learning that 20 clothing items, and that's what you will achieve. We should be able to really connect some context to vocabulary that we're learning, because our brain just doesn't remember separate information. The information has to be relevant, the information has to be interesting, it has to be tied to some kind of experience and maybe some kind of emotions. If you keep forgetting things, I think it's a sign that this information is not really coming up in your daily life, because you wouldn't forget something you've been doing every day. Like, do you forget your PIN code? Most probably you don't. But I don't really remember the surname of a friend that I haven't spoken to in a year, because this information is not really relevant to my brain, and it doesn't feel necessary to keep it, because we have to make space for some kind of new information, right? So I think the way to enhance the vocabulary learning is just putting it in some kind of context by making it more relevant. And then this context has to show up regularly in your daily life. You can actually learn a lot of vocabulary from songs and movies, but the problem is that no one is going to tell you, listen to this song and you will learn 10 new French words. It's something you have to do. It's up to you. And I think for so many people, they really ignore this personal side of language learning, the part where you have to do your personal effort. So it's like you can't really employ context in your daily life. The context that you can have is only in your textbook, only in learning materials, but to that kind of context, most of you aren't really accustomed to because you don't take the steps to do something in that language. So if I listen to that song and you listen to another song, or if you don't listen to a song at all, we are going to learn different vocabulary. Before following on with my tips, I want to introduce you to a platform that makes it slightly easier to come across to authentic and natural content in your target language. So today, I will mention FluentU. It's a platform that brings to you some short videos, some extractions from documentaries, YouTube videos, songs, movies, everything, and you will have the interactive subtitles where you can just click and save a word to your library. So it's a system that actively employs what I've told you. But today I would actually want to highlight a feature that I think most of you are going to find helpful. And to test that feature, we're going to use this German magazine that I recently got from a German-speaking region of northern Italy, I will choose some vocabulary and we will go to my library in FluentU. We will go to section My Flashcards and then we will establish a new flashcard set. Now that we establish our vocabulary list, I'm going to enter some words from the article. So we imported our own words from the magazine here. If we click on the words, we are going to get example sentences from the internet and also we are going to get videos.
Deswegen letztendlich machen wir inzwischen auch einfach sehr viel selber, damit wir einfach alles, ich sag mal,
die inzwischen verrosteten Gleise oder der zugewucherte Tunnel.
So the platform also helps you to create your own vocabulary list, bringing examples from the internet and also providing context, finding videos that include the word that you were looking for. If you'd like to try learning with FluentU, you can refer to the link in the description of this video and you will get a 40% discount for your yearly subscription. I think you should try it out because it makes it really practical at the end. So now let's switch to personal learning techniques a little bit. What we are going to focus on is not really how to memorize vocabulary because we said vocabulary learning hasn't a lot to do with memory. We just have to employ the right techniques. So we will let the language settle in our brains. And I also mentioned that you could use media while doing that. You could use the subtitles or transcripts because many podcasts are going to have transcripts inside, like a text you can follow. We're going to employ them in ways that will help us to make the language settle in our brains. At this point, I think it's a well-known fact that we have to put the vocabulary in some kind of relation to something if we really want to recall that information. But I think the way we do this still differs according to our cognitive learning system because not everyone learns things in the same way. And a way to understand how your brain ideally absorbs stuff is, for me, looking at your childhood. How you used to learn things. Did you repeat them a lot? Did you always speak out loud? Did you write for pages or did you just read it until it was familiar to you? And if you're still a student, I think your learning habits nowadays, what works for you and what doesn't, that's also a really useful clue that you could use to determine your personal way of learning vocabulary. I will try to give you some ideas and describe for what kind of person these are likely to work. I first want to start with my people because I always had to speak things out loud. I always study by speaking because I have to hear myself saying those things. So I employ this method that I elaborated in a separate video a few months ago, but I'm just going to shortly show you di cosa si tratta. Let's say you have a text that includes different vocabulary, or you have sentences, or you have a list of vocabulary that you have to learn. You will record yourself reading that thing, that sentences or the texts, and at the end you will have this voice records that you're going to listen to.
Lokakuussa on pilvistä. It's cloudy in October. Lokakuussa on pilvistä. Marraskuussa on sumuista. It's foggy in November. Marraskuussa on sumuista. Joulukuussa on pimeää. It's dark in December.
It wasn't like January, February, March, April. I was using them in sentences and I was combining different sets of vocabulary. If you can relate to my way of learning, I think it will be the best for you to check out my separate video about this vocabulary learning technique because there are a lot of more information and examples. Other than that, if you are more of a visual learner, I think I'm partially a visual learner, but some things work for me and some of them don't. A really effective method is establishing mind maps. You could take a topic and you could create a mind map around it. And I think you could also create separate groups of verbs, phrases, expressions, maybe spoken variations, and at the end having a complete table of the vocabulary around the topic would really be helpful if you had to do some kind of speaking practice or if you had to write something or if you just have to recall the vocabulary. Other than that, I know a lot of people use flashcards. Personally, I don't like using flashcards. I've experimented with Anki last year. I made those decks in Dutch and German. To me, flashcards feel like I'm trying to remember the card. I'm not trying to remember the word, you know, or the sentence. I don't find it effective, but it doesn't mean that flashcards are trash and no one should use flashcards. My Finnish course also has flashcards and they don't always come with sentences. Like imagine you have animals conjugated in different cases, and then you have the English translation. I just paste them on a Notion table and mostly ask ChatGPT to create me A1 sentences. It's like, the bird is big, the cat is cute, like these kind of basic sentences that I could just write as an example, because otherwise I know that I won't remember them, or even if I remember them, it will be hard for me to use them. If you are more of a verbal learner, if you like creating, if you like words, describing stuff, I think you would really like learning with monolingual definitions. You could get a monolingual dictionary online, and whenever you had to learn a new word, you could just learn the word in that language, like described in that language. And also something else you could like is obviously writing journal entries in the language that you're learning. To me, this is not something I would do while learning a language. Like, I wouldn't prefer to journal in Swedish because my Swedish doesn't feel really strong. And I feel like I should be perfectly fluent before journaling. So I would rather journal in French or in Italian. I don't think this approach is really correct. I don't want to preach it, but that's how I see that, and that's how I apply it. Some people, on the other hand, are more logical and analytical. I think in this case, you could like connecting vocabulary to grammar. Like, you can learn vocabulary when you're learning new grammar rules, and maybe you could associate them. Also, I think you would really like learning vocabulary in separate sentences. Like, you have a sentence to analyze, and while doing all this work, your brain would also naturally absorb the vocabulary in the sentence. If you are more of a social type of learner, I think you would really like explaining and teaching what you learned. Or maybe you could learn from real-life interactions, real-life conversations, or the interactions you have with your friends. And also you could like using the vocabulary intentionally right after learning it. Sometimes I try to use newly learned vocabulary in my sentences in a more deliberate way, just for me as a practice. After all those different learning ways, I think it's also clear that learning vocabulary isn't enough, because we also have to remember them. But there's a fact that many people tend to ignore. It's that not every word is used in the same frequency in a language. Some words you will hear them every day if you have like the minimal interaction with the language. Some words you will only find them in books, in scientific articles, in a lecture. So you can learn them, but maybe you are going to forget them in 2 months. The goal isn't really to preserve every single word as if it was a sacred piece of information, because your brain is going to forget and replace what isn't relevant. And this also means if you use a language in your daily life well enough, if you consume different forms of media, you are going to have the most frequent vocabulary that you need to speak and understand that language, because it's always going to come across. But the specific vocabulary, the academic vocabulary, the expressions, the slangs can disappear after a while if they become irrelevant. I'll be concluding this video here. Thanks for your attention, and hopefully my ideas were inspiring in some way. And also, I will be leaving a Notion template in the description of this video. You can just download it for free. It's basically a tool for you to save your vocabulary if you're also into digital note-taking, because I don't really have a system of flashcards, and I have to store my vocabulary either in a notebook or in a Notion template, whatever you find more comfortable and effective. So you basically have to save the word, definition, the sentence, and also the type of the word. So hopefully you will find it useful, and you can also follow me on social media for more updates, and see you in another video. Bye!